Welcome to Concussion Talk Podcast. I'm Nick Mercer. I'm on now with Ashley Hiscock of Premier Athletic Therapy, and I'll throw it to Ashley to plug her business and what she's doing there. So Ashley, go nuts.
Sure. So like you said, my name is Ashley Hiscock. I'm a certified athletic therapist, and I own Premier Athletic Therapy and Sports Medicine. So pretty uncommon profession here in Newfoundland and Labrador, I guess. I think there's only 4 practicing athletic therapists in the province. So it's not a well-known profession, but it's basically, we specialize in sport rehabilitation, so sports injury rehab. And of course, as you know, concussions come into that. So we don't see an overwhelming number of concussion clients, which is a good thing, but we do see them from time to time as it does occur in sports. So that's kind of where we come into it, I guess.
Cool. So you were saying that you were just at a hockey tournament or with the team or both, I guess?
Yeah. I went actually as a support staff trainer. They call them at hockey because you don't necessarily have to be a therapist to go. Okay. But it was the Atlantic Challenge Cup in Moncton, New Brunswick. So it was with the Hockey NL program. So it was two girls teams and 2 boys teams.
What ages were they like?
The girls were all under the age of 18, so there was a U16 team and a U18 team, and the boys were U14 and U15, I believe. So the boys are a bit younger.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you entered that tournament in Moncton, and how did Newfoundland do?
Newfoundland,
and Labrador. I'm sorry. And Labrador.
Yeah, and Labrador. Yeah, I can't forget them.
Yeah.
I think pretty well overall. Like I said, I wasn't really with the team, so it was. I found it harder to keep track of wins and losses. I guess I was trying to keep an eye on all 4 teams. I was kind of floating between everybody, but overall, I think it went well.
And you saw some concussions there, obviously with other teams, but with anyone on the Newfoundland Labrador team.
We definitely had athletes that were presenting with concussion symptoms. So as an athletic therapist, I don't get to diagnose anything. I just have to indices of suspicion, and then you refer to, a sport doctor or a physician, a general physician, to confirm those things. But we definitely saw athletes who either took a hit to the head or took a hard hit to the body, so some rotational forces through the head, and then were presenting with concussion symptoms. So whether it was headache was obviously your most common symptom, but also we had a few who were sensitive to the light in the arenas or sensitive to the noise. So obviously pucks hitting off the glass and off the boards it's a loud noise when you don't have anything going on, but when you've got, a little bit of your brain rattling around inside your skull, it definitely doesn't help. So we did have a few athletes that we ended up sending off to the doctor just to make sure that they were good to go or they weren't good to go. So it was really, up to the health practitioner that ended up seeing them after us. But we definitely dealt with our fair share of kids who are complaining of concussion symptoms. So we always want to err on the side of caution and take them out and make sure they're okay.
Yeah. So is that like your role as an athletic therapist to recognize concussion symptoms and just say, hey, go see a doctor, or not, hey, go see a doctor, give them to a doctor, basically?
Yeah, essentially, I guess with Hockey Canada, they have they have a concussion protocol kind of set out. So the doctor always supersedes whatever therapist is there. It's not like athletic therapist specifically can't make the call. It's just, unless you have a sport doctor on site, you can't clear someone to play. And that's personally not something I'm super comfortable with either, especially when it comes to children. So for us, it's basically taking their symptoms and running through a SCAT-5 if it's available, which unfortunately wasn't available to us that weekend. So I am fairly familiar with the SCAT-5, which is just the sport concussion assessment tool. With kids, like I said, it's a little harder because a lot of them have never felt these symptoms before. And then, their parents are usually there as well. And they're quite either upset at the fact that their child might not be playing or upset that their child might be injured. Hopefully the latter.
Yeah.
It's when it comes to, I'll say, a high stakes tournament, which, it's not the biggest tournament in the world, but people put a lot on the line and they put a lot of training in. So the idea of, potentially getting hit in the first game and not playing the last 3 or 4 is really devastating to some people, which is understandable.
Yeah.
It's the last thing we want to do is to sit someone out, but ultimately it's for your long-term health,
Is there a door opening?
Yeah, we've got people coming in.
See, which I can't hear much because I'm right above Churchill Square in St. John's, and
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of racket
sure.
bakery is hopefully going in. What it is actually going in just downstairs and over a bit, but there's lots
Oh,
of
great.
noise in the parking lot, so I don't
Sure.
know if you can hear that. Can you hear that? Or
I can't hear yours now.
okay, well there's honks and yells. The school is nearby, right? So
Oh yeah, no, I haven't heard.
lunchtime comer for pizza or whatever.
We have to close the doors here apparently because it's going
Yeah.
to be very squeaky.
Yes. So where is just in terms of your business? Where is it in St. John's and how do people get there? Like, just
Yeah, sure. So
just
we're
plug it for St.
actually,
John's people.
yeah, we are located in the west end of St. John. So we're on Hamlin Road, which is near the Village Shopping Center. So there's a plaza here. It's just the Hamlin Road Plaza. Most people are familiar with the Red Pepper. So we're in the Red Pepper Plaza, actually right next door.
Cool.
So that's where we are. Yeah, we're fairly accessible. Yeah, it's a nice spot. We're near the new high school. Lots of parking, so we're happy with it.
That's my former high school. I went to Bishop's High School, Bishop's
Oh
College.
yeah, okay.
So
Yep.
that's like part of my where that's now just I don't know what it is now. Now it's just an empty building, but in the center of town. But yeah,
That would have
that's
been your
where
school.
that was my old school half like it was old Booth school too, right? Like
Right.
in
Yep.
right. And where did you go to school? University, not school.
I went to
High school.
high school. I went to high school in at Holy Spirit in Manuals. I grew up in
Okay.
CBS.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, I was never at your school. Well, I probably was, but I
A
don't
few
know.
years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's like or like what's that? Over 20 years ago. Anyway,
Isn't it crazy?
yeah,
It's over half my lifetime ago
I
now
know
that I
it's
went to high school. So
definitely
it's
it's a bit much.
crazy to.
But did you freeze? You just
Nope,
froze.
I don't.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, your voice is okay. What made the so having problems with the connection, but yeah. So if you can hear me now, you can hear me fine? Yeah,
I
you're
can.
moving.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Um, and you just say you're in hockey like tournament or team last weekend, but you do other sports. You're in connection with the you coach for the Mon cheerleading team, for example, right?
I
And
do. Yep.
and you like gymnastics is your sport, right?
That's right. Yeah,
So
gymnastics I did all growing up.
any other is that like would you see anything in that sport you think that's gonna when you watch like that sport like either right when you're there or on TV you think that's looking that'll be a concussion or they're looking for that person that their competitor is gonna be hurting.
Sure. Like any particular sport or just
Yeah,
anything?
yeah. Well, I take a sport in any event that you watch, you think maybe that looks a bit difficult, or that looks a bit like he or she hurt themselves,
For
and
sure.
I wonder if that person has a concussion or
I find hockey and football are probably the most obvious,
yeah,
obviously, just due to the nature of
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
collision sport, both of
yeah,
them. And I've never looked at anything and said like, oh yeah, that's a concussion, even though
yeah,
as much as you want to, but we're all built so differently. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if I mentioned this the last time we chatted, but I've had a couple of concussions and I've never been hit in the head. Like, I've always been hit on
no.
the body. Like, I think I'm that perfect example of like females have small necks that like can't support our heads properly.
If
And
you're
so
a
I
like
think
therapist, they should have a big neck. I
I
can't
know
say
I should be working it out, but I've never been hit in the head, but I've definitely had at least two concussions, if not a third one. But and no, they've been minor. Like I'm
was
not
playing
gonna.
playing sports or like playing like doing
Uh,
gymnastics or cheerleading or
I
not
never
cheerleading.
I never had one in gymnastics that I know of. But if I think if I could go back in time and like be in my old body but have the brain that I have now, I'd probably be more mindful of it, obviously.
I think where you
Um,
would have it gymnastics.
yeah, like I
Do
feel like I
floor routines
probably
or floor stuff or your
what
uh,
there's so much
toning.
for error in every event on
Yeah,
gymnastics. Like it's a wonder you don't see a lot
that's
more
true.
of them. But
That's
the
true. Yeah,
culture, yeah, you could definitely see them on any event for
yeah.
gymnastics. But no, I only got one of mine playing. got one of my playing sports for sure. One of my teammates ran into me at Ultimate Frisbee, and it was
that's a fun sport though.
It's so fun. It's so much fun.
It is.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I didn't enjoy that particular incident, but
I've been
other than that, it was fine.
Did you play in the league here?
I do, yeah. The Mile Zero Ultimate. I play. I'm not playing right now. It's the first league that I've taken off. I guess I needed a bit of a break, but I played. This is my 4th year playing now, I think. So it's been a lot of fun.
And the Muncher leaders, they're doing well now? You said you began to tell me a bit about that, but I cut you off earlier and you were talking before the podcast.
Yeah.
So what are
they? They're still in training mode right now, but we're really getting their routine ramped up for competition. So their first competition is December 1st, and that's in Brampton, Ontario. And then they're going to the ICU World Championships, World University Championships in Florida, and that will be the 3rd weekend in January, I think. It's a little bit later this year. But really, they don't have a full routine right now. There's a little tiny bit of dance at the end missing, but all their skills are in place. So they're just working very hard at getting those skills mastered for their routine, and then it's going to be flat out from here on out with executing the routine and making it perfect.
And so other than gymnastics, you also this is nothing concussion related, well, it can be. You do a bit of comedy too, don't you?
I do a bit of comedy, yeah. I just
stand-up?
started stand-up comedy, yeah. So I just started in February and wasn't really sure how it was going to go, but it's something I've really wanted to do for quite a long time. And I had a lot of friends who were like, "You should try that." And it's really scary, but when you get up there and you occasionally make people laugh, it's a lot of fun. I got to say, it's probably I absolutely don't regret it. I do regret not doing it a lot earlier because it would have been I could have been having so much fun all this time. But I'm really new at it, so I'm certainly not very good, but trying to get better all the time, like anything, I guess.
Yeah. But there's not many venues really in Newfoundland. I mean, St. John's a few, and then I don't know, the Bay a few, but there's nothing it's not like you're in Toronto or New York or something like that where you can get like big cities.
For sure. Like there's obviously more opportunity for everything away.
Yeah.
But in terms of the comedy, like there's a really good group of people, and people have worked really hard to make comedy available to the public. So there's comedy 5 nights out of 7 in St. John's, actually. Most people are pretty surprised to hear that. Yeah. And the rooms, like some of them are newer than others, but I mean, they're all pretty successful, and it's really nice to see just people come together and want to laugh for a couple of hours on an evening. So it's really nice to be a part of. I've met some really great people through it as well. And like I said, you just regret not doing it a bit earlier and meeting these, wonderful people, wonderful, funny people in your life. Because who can't use a few funny people in their lives, you know?
Exactly. Good, very good point. You can't. Especially if people have gone through some challenges or.
Absolutely. Yeah. And being able to take those challenges, like there are, definitely a few of those people in the comedy community who've been through some, tough times, and to be able to take those experiences and even be able to make a joke out of them is really, it's really interesting. Thankfully, that hasn't been me. I haven't had to turn any downs into, funny moments, but I imagine it's pretty cathartic to be able to either laugh at yourself or laugh at your situation or make other people laugh about something that could be, otherwise very, very hurtful.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you get involved? You said you've had a few concussions, but what was you were like, I'm doing, I don't know, you did athletic therapy first or whatever, but you decided that you want to focus on concussions and brain injury. What was it that made you come to that? Or is there anything, one thing? Or just general interest?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any one thing. I think the fact that they're still so misunderstood is really interesting to me. And even within the medical community, I mean, no one still truly knows exactly what a concussion is, which, is super frustrating as well as interesting. But just the knowledge that's out there for the general public some of it is so dated. And the internet is a wonderful tool, but you can find literally anything on the internet to support whatever you believe. So I've seen websites that say, if you've been knocked out, you might have a concussion. And I just cringe because, people, and I'll pick on parents, I guess, because that's what I deal with. Kids usually who have been knocked around a bit, or, they took a weird fall, or they, spun their head around or whatever. And, they're like, well, are they throwing up? And I'm like, no, they're not throwing up, but they have 5 other symptoms. It's not an easy answer, and it's not an easy injury to deal with. Everyone presents so differently, as I'm sure you're more than well aware of. I might have a headache for a week, and, you may be sensitive to the light for a week, but it doesn't mean one of us isn't really having a concussion, and it's super frustrating. And there's healthcare professionals out there too, who are saying, well, if you have this, that, or the other thing, maybe you have a concussion. And I'm looking at like, those are such old ways of thinking. And we should be so well, ahead of that now, and we're not. So that's really frustrating to me. So I think my, draw to being better with concussions, because I'm certainly not the best person in the world. I'm human like anybody else. I try to be really good, but I do take a conservative approach as well. And I think people, if they can buy into it, it's great, but everyone wants to get back to their sport or their activity like yesterday. So it's really trying to rein these people in, and you're trying to stress the importance of taking care of it versus, potentially making it worse if you go back too early. And people just, I don't know, it can be really frustrating, but I want to be good at dealing with concussions. I want to be good at communicating how serious they can be without, fear mongering. I don't want people to be frightened to death to do anything either, because, we could make the argument that sport is terrible for everybody, because you could get a concussion. But I mean, you could get hit walking across the street. So who knows, So I really want to be someone that is trusted with the information, and I want to be getting the information from the right people. So, these huge conferences that we have every 4 years where they put out a new scat and a new position statement, I really try to take those pieces of information and I'm like, these are the gold standards and this is what we're going to do. So in those 4 years, all this, I don't want to say all these, but there's definitely people who are doing research in those 4 years, obviously, or else we wouldn't be having these updated conferences. But, they're like, well, we found that doing this at this point is better now. And I'm like, well, until I see that in the position statement next year, I'm not doing it. And I really, like I said, I became an athletic therapist because I didn't want to take people out of their sport. Because when I was an athlete, I was tired of people saying, well, just stop doing that. Or I guess gymnastics isn't for you. Or I guess, you'll have to stop this or stop that. And it's like, why are we telling people to stop doing what they love? We just need to modify what they're doing, or we need to decrease their repetitions or the volume or the load. We need to play around with this, but they can still do things. They don't have to quit. I mean, it's not going to do anyone's mental health good to look at someone and say, you got to quit your sport, unless it's absolutely necessary. Obviously there are times when that's your last resort, but it is, what you're dealing with. But yeah, sorry, that got really long-winded, but
it's good.
I just really want to be a good resource for people and a trusted resource for people, that they're like, okay, Ashley doesn't want to keep me out of my sport. She's doing it because she cares about me as a person, and she cares about my long-term health and, my continued success in my sport, or being able to do it for a long time versus being able to do it for this week or this month. Because in the grand scheme of things, if you do miss a month of your sport, it absolutely is not ideal, but it's better than missing your season. It's better than never being able to do it again. So it's, I really try to approach things, and same thing with regular, musculoskeletal injuries, which is mostly what I'm dealing with. I really try to, approach things with logic. And I say to people or their parents or an adult athlete, do you want to be out for this next game, or do you want to potentially be out for the rest of your season? Because that's what we're talking about here, and it's, long term is where I'm trying to look most of the time. I don't like to focus on the short term. We have to focus on short term for, goals and getting to where you need to be in the long term. But in terms of you getting into your next game, that's really not my not my focus, I guess.
No, that's a really good point because I was thinking of that when you were saying that people say if you have this, if like you're throwing up or your head hurts or you have sensitive to light, then you might have a concussion. But if you say like if you have like these problems, then you might have a concussion. You're kind of making it sound like if you don't have the people everywhere make it sound like if you don't have these symptoms, then you don't have a concussion. Like it's kind of goes
Right.
both ways, and it's
Yeah.
be a bit dangerous. But then again, like you're saying, I mean, you can't say like nobody has a concussion or everybody does, and so there's no like you're saying there's no one thing that's determining factor. So
Right.
it's something and long term, like you're just probably looking for the long term effect, long term benefits, or make sure it's good long term.
Mm-hmm.
That's also really hard people see because they don't because you mean you can't see that long term thing if you're hurting today or even if you're not hurting
Absolutely.
today, if you're a fine day or seeing like next week is still a bit far off seems a long time away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, smallest things that just makes the brain juice to the brain just that much more difficult.
For sure. And it's super frustrating, and I can, relate to an extent because I've gone through it, like I
Yeah,
said, albeit on a much, more minor
yeah,
scale. But I say to kids all the time if they've, hurt their ankle, I'm like, how old are you? And they may say like, I'm 14. And I'm like, and do you plan on living till you're 100 like I do? And they kind of laugh and they're like, I guess. And I'm like, well, you need that ankle for 86 more years.
yeah,
So like, let's get this going. And I mean, with the brain, it's a lot more
yeah,
sensitive. You want your brain until you're done. So,
yeah.
I try to phrase it in that way, and everyone kind of
That's
gets a
good.
chuckle, and so you
Yeah,
break the tension, but they
yeah,
also get it at that point.
yeah. Good point. Well, you've been talking for 20 minutes now, so
Wow.
I guess
Absolutely.
that's probably about good for this podcast. But turns out you have a phone call, so are
Oh
you done?
gosh. Oh my
You
gosh.
do. Okay. Well then,
Silence.
I will.
I'm sorry.
I will. No worry. Don't worry. I
Oh,
will say goodbye, Cassie. Okay.
I can hear it off the ringer. I'm so sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Ah,
Thanks for
thanks, Nick.
thanks for coming on. Thank you.
Eddie.
Ashley's business can be found online at premierathletictherapy.com. And if you're in Newfoundland Labrador or St. John's, you can check out Premier Athletic Therapy on Hamlin Road. Also, please visit my website at www.concussiontalk.com. I plan to have another blog for the first time in a while out sometime this week, hopefully by Wednesday. So please stay tuned for that. As always, music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.